Welcome one and all to another episode here at the Damage Report. I am John Idarola. That's as it always is, boring stuff. Nothing new there, but there is something new here, and that is joining us for the first time ever on the Damage Report, Farron Cousins. Farron, welcome to the show.
John, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It's exciting to have you here. I can feel the warmth of the ring of fire approaching. We got a lot that we're gonna be talking about today. Very excited to break down these stories with you. And I'm sure that the vast majority of the people watching right now know who you are, they know your work, they appreciate your work. But for people who might not be familiar with the show, tell us a little bit about how you got into this and what the focus of your show is. What drives you politically?
Well, I've been with Ring of Fire closing in on 18 years now.
It's been 18 years?
It has been 18 years. Ring of Fire actually started as a 1 hour weekly weekend show on Air America Radio. And then we moved to video. We had our own Go Left TV thing. We had a show with Free Speech TV. And now every day I get on, I do about 8 segments every morning. And we've grown leaps and bounds. We got over 800,000 subscribers on the YouTube. I also have a side YouTube channel I do that's a little more fun and relaxed. That's just called Fair and Balanced. But yeah, we just nonstop, and we're always trying to find new things to get into. I also the editor of the Trial Lawyer magazine, which is something that Mike Papantonio, who founded Ring of Fire, he started that as well. So we've got our hands in so many things. We've been a part of, I think, 8 different documentaries.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
It's nonstop, and we love it. By the way, we love every minute of it. But yeah, I started at age 21, been here almost 18 years. So everybody can do the math on how haggard I truly am from all of this. But it's a great thing, and just continuing to grow it all, watching it grow has been just huge for us, and we love every second of it.
Well, that is awesome. I had no idea it had been 18 years. That is really amazing. It is a wonder that you are still able to hold yourself upright after 18 years of following along with the insanity of the news. But everyone should definitely check out your different channels, including, as you said, Fair and Balanced, at bringing some fun and levity to the news. We try to do that too, because look, if you approach everything with exactly the carefully calibrated level of seriousness that on some level, I guess it demands, you'll burn out in 6 months, and that'll be that. And almost by design, it's almost like they try to drive us out, but we're not going to allow that to happen. So very excited to have you here. Thank you for being here. And Chump Hammer says, hey, it's the 2 people's videos I watch in the morning and now on one screen. So, but anyway, thank you, all of you in the audience, for being here. We've got a lot that we're to be breaking down over the next 90 minutes or so, including the most recent updates on what's going on, to the extent that anything is going on in regards to January 6th. We've got some really fascinating and potentially positive updates when it comes to Ukraine. And also, obviously, everybody knows that the big sort of social story of the week so far has been Will Smith. Well, we've now had 1 day of Fox News's commentary on that. What do you think that's gonna be like? We'll have some choice excerpts for you and a lot more besides. So along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that'd be great, because the algorithm is absolute trash and notifications don't work on YouTube. So if you could help us out, it'd be much appreciated. And if you wanna send us comments, tweets, super chats, all that as we go, we will respond during our breaks. But with all that said, Farron, are you ready to break down some news?
Absolutely, let's get to it.
Okay, let's do it. Let's start with this.
The Department of Justice is entrusted with the defense of our Constitution. Department leadership should not apply any doctrine of immunity that might block Congress from fully uncovering and addressing the causes of the January 6th attack.
In the United States of America, no one is above the law. This committee is doing its job. The Department of Justice needs to do theirs.
The Department of Justice has a duty to act on this referral and others we have sent. Without enforcement of congressional subpoenas, there is no oversight.
Attorney General Garland, do your job so that we can do ours.
So there you're seeing a mashup of different members of the January 6th commission, sort of on both sides. It's kind of bipartisan if you still consider Liz Cheney to be a Republican. Most Republicans don't. And they're frustrated with the DOJ for not following up on one of their referrals, specifically having to do with Mark Meadows. So it's kind of a nice moment where they're as frustrated with the DOJ as we are, as frustrated with Merrick Garland as we are, but they want to see some movement. And bear in mind that the department did move quickly to criminally charge Steve Bannon back just 4 or 5 months ago. That's just 3 weeks after the House held him in contempt for defying a select committee subpoena. Contempt charges against Bannon, who's slated to face trial in July, so mark that on your calendars. It's gonna be an exciting month. We're a jolt of support for the committee, they say. Now, Bannon, of course, is not interested in any of this. He's trying to defy the subpoena, saying it's invalid, and I'm sure he's got a rigorous legal argument that he's using there. But so far, when it comes to Mark Meadows, who had briefly cooperated with the committee before withdrawing his support, that brief cooperation, by the way, having generated a lot of interesting news when it comes to Ginny Thomas and all that. DOJ seemingly not as interested in actually pushing forward on this. So Farron, I know there's been a big story developing for over a year now. What do you think about the DOJ's interesting approach to who they will charge and who they won't at this point?
I think it's obvious at this point, Merrick Garland, the DOJ, they've got reservations about all of it. And I think it's because they're too afraid to fight. I mean, how long has that Meadows contempt charge been sitting there? What was it, December 14th, I believe was the day the vote was held. So 3.5 months, they've been sitting on this criminal referral, doing absolutely nothing about it. And like you said, they had no problem going after Bannon. Well, guess what? Bannon wasn't a part of the actual administration, right? He's just a dude out there with a podcast right now. I mean, that's who he is. So sure, we can go after him because we're not actually touching the administration. So when it comes to, do we want to get into that? Do we want to wade into these political waters? They're terrified. And if you're terrified, the DOJ is not a place where you should be working. You're going to have to do things that are going to be unpleasant. You're going to have to do things that are going to draw the public's ire. You may have to go after Democrats one day, Merrick Garland. And if you're not willing to do that, put the partisan blinders down and say, bad things happened, it's our job, then get out of the way and let's put somebody there who will. I've been calling since November for the DOJ to appoint a special prosecutor to essentially take over for the January 6th committee. Now, the committee has put themselves in a position, they've given themselves, I believe, a summer deadline, like we're gonna have our report by summer, just in time for the campaign season and all of that. Makes political sense, but legally speaking, we're not gonna be done. We're literally learning new things every day, things that we didn't know last week, and it's always a bombshell. It's not just little bitty tidbit news here or there. It's big, massive things that need to be fully investigated. And this committee, by its own design, by what Congress can do, can't fully get into the legal issues that a special prosecutor or special prosecutors could do. But again, it all goes back to Merrick Garland. He's not willing to do this because he's terrified. And I think it may be time to start pushing Biden like, hey, there's lots of really good, smart prosecutors out there who would love to take that job. Certainly not Alvin Bragg. So maybe we go start looking at them. Hey, what's Letitia James up to after she finishes this civil investigation in New York? There's a good candidate.
For now, let's let her do that job first. But right. Sure, potentially. It really comes down to the timeline that we have available, because the January 6th commission could utterly evaporate in 8 months if the Republicans take over. All the more reason to get something in now. And honestly, I think it's a pretty good plan, particularly because of how terrified Merrick Garland is. And honestly, the January 6th commission is too. Like here, they're trying to present themselves as kind of the tough guys, saying like, we need to act, you need to get in there. But bear in mind, they're asking him to do something. What are they actually doing? Like they don't want to force members of the House to testify. Like it's very easy to point fingers at Merrick Garland and say that he's a coward. That's easily demonstrable. But they're also pretty cowardly. They seem to be trying to map out a path that is just provocative enough and interesting enough that it could potentially have that sort of strategic effect on the election that they clearly want this to have. And I'm sure that if there's stuff that's very shallowly buried, they want to dig it up and reveal it. But they're not willing to go that much further than that. I mean, it's one thing to like give a referral to the DOJ, but what about all the Congress people that were given the tours, and what happened with the panic button, and all these questions that we still have, 15 months later? I'd like to see some bravery from them too on the actual committee.
Oh, absolutely. And it was shocking when they did make that announcement. Yeah, I guess it was last week that, we're not gonna subpoena any members of Congress. And again, it's because they're afraid. They understand if they do that, the Republicans will immediately weaponize it in their midterm attack ads and say, see, we told you this was a political witch hunt from the start. Now they're subpoenaing Jim Jordan. Now they're subpoenaing Mo Brooks. No, it's not.
Aren't they going to do that anyway?
They are, and that's the problem that this committee doesn't realize. It's okay. Look, it's just like when we can't nominate Bernie Sanders because then they'll call us all socialists, and then you get Biden, and we're still all called socialists anyway. So no matter what the committee does, they're going to paint it as this partisan witch hunt. So go all out, do the things that they're daring you to do, so that we can get the answers. This is not about revenge. It's not about trying to make somebody look like a fool. It's about letting the country know who was involved in this attack on the Capitol. And if we don't get all the answers to that, like you said, Republicans, McCarthy, a couple days ago, I think, made it clear this committee's dead if Republicans take over. So if we don't have answers by then, we likely won't get them.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of things that the Democrats are doing that I'm sure you've talked about at length that are seemingly designed to ensure that Republicans will take over by the end of the year. One thing you could potentially do to help keep control is to reassure the American public that you actually take these threats to democracy seriously. And the January 6th Commission, of course, is only one part of that, but seeming to take it seriously would reassure the public. And honestly, like if you're not brave enough to do what you need to do, and if Merrick Garland clearly isn't brave enough to do what he needs to do, then just do what Farron is asking. Get the special, the prosecutor in there, let them do it. Then it's not you. You're not the one that's asking for these things, it's them. They're the partisan witch doing the hunt in this metaphor. I just think that that's a way safer road to take, but even that I guess is too provocative for these utter cowards.
It really is. The special prosecutor avoids all of the problems that we see now and the problems that are foreseen in the next year. If the committee gets killed by Kevin McCarthy, oh well, we've got our special prosecutor. This person's gonna carry on the investigation. Oh, the committee is waiting for Merrick Garland to act on the criminal referrals. A special prosecutor doesn't have to do that. They can do that themselves.
Yes.
So all of the holdups, all of the problems, the potential disbanding of the committee, that gets avoided with this very simple move of saying, okay, this person is our special prosecutor. And I think it goes even beyond just one. I think you have several. You appoint one to investigate the Stop the Steal rally and everyone involved with that. You get another to focus strictly on Donald Trump and the administration's efforts to stall the electoral count, basically stop that from happening. And then of course the third to actually look at the insurrection itself. Who was involved, who stoked that. So you got 3 special prosecutors, there's your jobs. I've laid it out all for you, Merrick. I don't know what you're waiting on. But if you want to have a phone call with me, I'm always available. I will tell you how to do this. I just don't know who to put in charge of it yet.
Exactly. And look, I agree with what you said earlier that they're gonna say that you're doing it anyway. They're gonna say that it's a partisan witch hunt. So like you're kind of getting the witch hunt for free. You're already gonna be criticized for it. Why not do it? And by the way, that's not what you're doing. Isn't that nice? That like you're gonna get away with it because they would attack you either way, and you're actually doing the right thing because the thing that you're investigating is real and happened. Isn't that novel? Like not spending years and years investigating absolutely trumped up things or whatever Hunter Biden put on his Instagram or whatever. Like you will be doing something that is founded in an honest search for truth that actually cares about ethics. And by the way, I totally agree that we need answers. Totally. And as you've pointed out, there's been a lot that's been coming out just over the past few months. God only knows what we don't know at this point. But also, let's bear in mind the stakes. This is not like, well, they tried to insurrect, but now they've all gone off to produce movies or something. No, they're prepping to do it again. And if there are no, like, first of all, they're probably gonna try anyway, but if there's no consequences, then they are definitely gonna try to. And they'll have had 4 years to lay the legal groundwork to get more and more people to believe the big lie. We need to be very worried about the next steps of this movement. And Merrick Garland and even the January 6th Commission, they don't seem as if they are worried about the stuff that comes next. They seem to think that, well, this was a rough patch in American political history, but I guess we've moved on. I don't think that we have.
No, and you know who else doesn't think we've moved on from this are the judges that are overseeing the cases of the Capitol rioters themselves. All the way back starting in August, we started getting reports from these judges saying, first and foremost, the prosecutors are not going hard enough on these people. They're making too many very lenient plea deals. We don't like it. And more importantly, we're seeing in these people behavior that we believe it's going to repeat itself. So when these defendants are going in front of these judges and the judges are listening and the judges are trained to basically be able to read kinds of people like, are you truly remorseful? They don't see that. They see individuals that have in fact been radicalized, and the judges, including some appointed by Trump, have been out there saying, these people deserve more time in jail. This is not, they will do it again. That's why they've actually started putting their probation to go beyond January 6th of 2025. So that if they try another insurrection on January 6th, 2025, they go straight to jail. But when those people show us how worried they are about it, when they start adding into their rulings that, yes, it looks like Donald Trump broke the law, even when that's not what you were deciding a case on.
Yeah.
Those are, giant flags that they're waving, trying to say, folks, pay attention to this. And like you said, the committee's just like, yeah, if we get enough information, maybe that'll be good enough. We'll have a report by summer. We're gonna take some time at the beach, and then we got to run for re-election.
Exactly. Yeah, no, 100%. I'm glad to know about the probation deadlines. Like, I think it's very much like a fool me once situation. You get one insurrection, everybody. Okay, we go leaning after one attempt to overthrow democracy. You try to do it again, we're gonna take it kind of serious. But anyway, okay. So you had alluded to the judges who are waving those flags. We're gonna talk about one of those flags on the other side of this break. And then we're gonna get into some really fascinating updates on what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. If you are not a fan of people needlessly dying, you might like some of this news. So stick around after this.
Obtained 11 pages of internal White House records from the day of the attack that were turned over to the January 6th committee. They show for the first time a detailed and official account of Trump's phone calls and behind-the-scenes activities that day. They also notably contain a gap in the official records during the assault. Something is missing, since the gap stands in contrast to extensive public reporting about his calls at the time.
So the calls were happening, but for some reason they've been scrubbed from the official logs. And that, by the way, is not necessarily even the worst news today when it comes to Donald Trump and January 6th. But we are gonna pause on it for just a second because it seems like pretty big news. The idea that during one of the most consequential individual days in the Trump presidency, there's this big gap. And by the way, all of the stuff that he did publicly was terrible. So what was so bad that they felt they needed to keep it out of the official record? And is this big news? There's a few different ways to tell. One is the Fox approach to a story like this happening. So apparently they spent 37 seconds on it so far today. I think if it had been Biden, they would have made a time. Now, they didn't totally ignore it, so it's not the biggest bombshell ever, but they barely talked about it, Farron. So maybe there's something here.
Right. I mean, they've spent more time talking about a laptop of the president's son in the last 2 days than obviously about this story this morning, which of course is the biggest news to come out so far today. And you have to preface that with so far because there is no telling what else comes out the rest of the day. But no, it is huge. I mean, and of course you got to pay attention to Trump's statement too, because I think this was worded very intentionally, where he says, like, I don't know about burner phones. I didn't use burner phones. To the best of my knowledge, I've never heard that term. To the best of my knowledge is absolutely what a lawyer would coach their client to say in a deposition when taking the stand. Trump doesn't use that language. He absolutely does not. This was coached, and the fact that he used that tells me somebody got to him this morning and said, you're gonna have to say something, and it better be good because this is bad. Based on his statement, this is bad. So look, I'm loving it, of course, obviously, but I lose faith more and more every day that the guy's ever gonna be held accountable for anything. But I mean, my God, how much more evidence do we need? Whatever happened to the damn boxes that were down at Mar-a-Lago, the 15 boxes of classified? I mean, everybody kind of forgot already that even happened. So yes, this is huge. I mean, this is Watergate level on steroids. But are we going to move on a week from now and be like, oh yeah, remember those call logs that didn't exist and they should have? I don't know. I'm afraid we will forget about it.
I probably will too, honestly. Let's keep it real. It just comes at you so fast every day. Yeah, no, you're totally right. If Biden seemed to doze off in a press conference for 7 seconds, they would do a whole day of news about it. The idea that there's this massive cannonball blasted in the middle of the call logs is obviously a massive story. You're totally right. By the way, it's a fun game I occasionally like to play of, hey, remember this thing that should have been a total turning point in the Trump presidency? Hey, remember when we found out, like right before one of the presidential debates, that he clearly committed tax fraud? And then we just moved on and nothing happened about it. There's like 1,000 of those. But yeah, this is like, he clearly has been using burner phones. You're right. He does not use careful language like that. It's evasive, weenie language. And we know, I forget the guy's name, but it was like a week or two ago, one of the guys involved in the planning of the Ellipse rally said, I was the guy that bought the burner phones. They were clearly communicating on them. They knew why they would need to be using those phones. I sort of share, I think what you're expressing, a fear that nothing will come of this. We'll never find out what those calls were, but clearly they felt they had something to hide.
Well, and even if it wasn't burner phones specifically, we also have confirmation, and this goes back to that funny story where Trump had to use the Secret Service agent's cell phone to call Melania after the Stormy Daniels story broke because she wouldn't answer his calls. So we do know that the guy is not, opposed to grabbing somebody else's cell phone and making these calls. So that is also a real possibility, and that means, okay, maybe we do have to start calling in the Secret Service agents that were there that day. Did Trump use your phone? Do we have to, start subpoenaing those phone records too? At this point, because of this massive gap, everybody that was in the White House that day now should be looked at. Offer them immunity if you want, whatever. I don't know immunity from what, but whatever it is, send out the invites. You're invited to a special consultation with the January 6th committee. And by the way, bring your cell phone with you. We just want to talk. We just want to talk.
See what apps you got, What games you playing these days? Anyway, yeah, no, you're totally right. And by the way, related to the grabbing the Secret Service officer's phone, does anybody remember what happened immediately after Trump was banned from Twitter? He just started going onto other people's Twitter account of the people around him, and then they would get banned, and then he'd move on to another one. He was like a social media, like horde of locusts consuming accounts left and right. So yes, I think you're totally right. Start looking at the other ones. But the interesting thing is, as I said, maybe we can have a debate about which is the worst story for him. But Donald Trump has had multiple devastating headlines over the last 24 hours just in regards to January 6th, including this, which I now fear is gonna be lost in the shuffle of the news, as so many things are. A US federal judge yesterday found that former President Donald Trump and legal advisor John Eastman probably committed felony obstruction in their efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. More probably committed obstruction like we had with the Mueller report and everything. The judge's ruling ordered that 101 emails sent by Trump to Eastman be turned over to the January 6th commission that's looking into it. But I want to dive a little bit into the actual ruling that the judge put out. It's 44 pages, freely available. You can go look at the entire thing. Here are a few things that I think are important. Like this. Based on the evidence, the court finds it more likely than not that President Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct the joint session of Congress on January 6th. And again, as we'll get into, and Farron already sort of alluded to, this was not a thing where the judge was supposed to be ruling this broadly, but apparently felt like nobody else is doing anything, I gotta weigh in here. But I wanna give you a little bit more from the actual ruling. It says, Dr. Eastman and President Trump launched a campaign to overturn a Democratic election, an action unprecedented in American history. Their campaign was not confined to the ivory tower. It was a coup in search of a legal theory. The plan spurred violent attacks on the seat of our nation's government, led to the deaths of several law enforcement officers, and deepened public distrust in our political process. The illegality of the plan was obvious. Our nation was founded on the peaceful transition of power, epitomized by George Washington laying down his sword to make way for democratic elections. Ignoring this history, President Trump vigorously campaigned for the vice president to single-handedly determine the results of the 2020 election. And so all of that is fairly devastating, if a little bit toothless, I guess, because in terms of what the judge can do, I guess he did. It was force them to turn over those emails, Farron, but that's pretty much about as far as his authority here goes.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that judge cannot do anything beyond say, hey, everybody, please pay attention to the fact that as somebody who does it for a living, I'm telling you, there's some crimes in here. But that's all he can do is, again, wave the flag, flash that siren, but he can't make the arrest himself. So with regard to this specific case, obviously Eastman was trying to say, oh, we've got this attorney-client privilege. But if the attorney-client privilege, is basically covering up a crime, then no, the privilege goes out the window. All of that, it does become open for evidence. And that's, of course, what happened here. So maybe, obviously, now the committee is going to have this. And if the judge looked at these things and said, yes, there is a crime here, hopefully the committee can do the same thing and make that same determination. And I think that also goes to why the judge did it, basically as the warning to the committee, like, hey, I've seen this in here and I'm giving them to you. Go find what I found.
Yeah.
So let's hope they can. But again, even if the committee finds it, then they get to write their little referral and they send it over to Merrick Garland, and it just, I guess, piles up in his inbox because he's not doing anything. And then we're right back to square one with all of this.
Yeah, maybe they can slip the report like one page at a time through the tiny little slit in his like little bunker that Merrick Garland's hiding in behind like a 6-inch deep lead door. But anyway, look, we've been alluding to the fact that this is his just attempt to get people to focus on this. It becomes fairly explicit. I'm gonna read one more excerpt from the ruling. Look at this. More than a year after the attack on our Capitol, the public is still searching for accountability. This case cannot provide it. The court is tasked only with deciding a dispute over a handful of emails. This is not a criminal prosecution. This is not even a civil liability suit. At most, this case is a warning about the dangers of legal theories gone wrong, the powerful abusing public platforms, and desperation to win at all costs. If Dr. Eastman and President Trump's plan had worked, it would have permanently ended the peaceful transition of power, undermining American democracy and the Constitution. If the country does not commit to investigating and pursuing accountability for those responsible, the court fears January 6th will repeat itself. And rarely has everything that I believe been so perfectly replicated in a judicial ruling. But that's totally right. And you pointed out, again, the protection does not apply in cases where they knew that they were committing a crime. I don't know exactly what he found in the emails that demonstrates it, but it would hardly be the first demonstration that they knew what they were doing was illegal. There is just so much piled up there. And it's not just depressing to us as political communicators or analysts or whatever it is, to see the rich and the powerful so often go away without even the lightest consequences, to see like someone who smashed a window on January 6th face 1,000% more legal consequences than the guy who sent them to do it in pursuit of his political ambitions. But it also is incredibly depressing for regular people who already know that the system is biased against them. And like, usually you think that they use lawyers to kind of like hide their criminality, and that's why we can't get at them. All of this is out in the open, and it's as public as Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. But there's no consequences, Farron, and it is just so utterly demoralizing.
And I think the judge kind of felt the same way at this point too, because that last part you read, that didn't need to be in that ruling at all.
Exactly.
This was just the judge being like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna say it. I don't care if they want to hear it. I'm gonna say it in this ruling. I'm gonna have it officially on the record, in the record. It is the record. Here it is. And everybody needs to pay attention because, they feel it too. And they're the ones who get to oversee the justice system. They watch every day as these people that you're talking about, a kid gets caught with, an ounce of pot. Okay, well, bye, we'll see you in 10 years when you get out of prison.
Yeah.
These people attempted by every definition to overthrow the results of the, democratic election here in the United States. And what do they get to do? They get to go play golf every day. They get to go have fun. They get to go, on these podcasts. They get to appear at rallies. They get to do whatever the hell they want because nobody ever holds them accountable for anything. And it does come to a point where everybody just kind of gets the point enough is enough. And I know we're there. I know our audiences are there with the enough is enough, but not enough people are there because still far too many on the right believe that they're telling the truth, that Trump is telling the truth, that this is a witch hunt, that all of this is overblown, made up crap.
Yeah.
When, it's not. And that gets frustrating too, when you have to fight the people who just look at all this and just say, no, you're wrong.
Or that they know it's a crime, but they like the crime. And they very much like more of it. Yeah, and then of course there's the added slice of the population that thinks, oh no, there were consequences. Biden won, now we're good. Yeah. No, that's not how it works at all. That's a dangerous way to think.
I would leave it to our Ukrainian partners to characterize whether there is any genuine progress and whether Russia is engaging meaningfully. What I can say is this, there is what Russia says and there's what Russia does. We're focused on the latter. And what Russia is doing is the continued brutalization of Ukraine and its people. And that continues as we speak.
So that is, of course, Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, not necessarily buying the big breaking news, the monumental breaking news of the day when it comes to the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine, which is big. And we're gonna break it down. So Russia's defense ministry earlier today announced plans to drastically reduce military activity in 2 key Ukrainian regions in a bid to boost mutual trust with Ukraine following peace talks. So they say these 2 major areas, including, by the way, around Kyiv, which they have clearly been going hard for over the last month, they're going to be backing off. Now, there's a couple of different questions that we have to interrogate, which is it honest? Are they actually doing this? And if they do it, are they doing it for the reasons that they're saying that they're doing it? Well, on the first question, there is some indication, although grains of salt considering the source, as to whether this is actually happening. So CNN anchor tweets breaking. Russia is beginning to withdraw some forces from around Kyiv in what the US assesses is a major strategy shift. This is according to 2 senior US officials, thus grains of salt. US is already observing movements underway of Russian battalion tactical groups. In the US view, this is not a short-term adjustment to regroup, which was my fear going into this actually, but a longer-term move as Russia comes to grips with failure to advance in the north. Russian Ministry of Defense said Tuesday it has decided to drastically reduce hostilities there. US officials make clear the pullback is the direct result of Russia's failure to make further gains around Kyiv. Moreover, Russian forces that withdraw from the north will likely deploy to other parts of Ukraine, potentially besieging other major cities or just moving back into the disputed regions in the east of Ukraine. So to you, Farron, I ask, it looks like this is happening if you can believe these senior US officials. They're saying it's like a good faith thing to show the Ukrainians that we don't want, like they said specifically, we don't want innocent civilians in Kyiv to be injured, which is why we spent a month bombarding them with cruise missiles and artillery and all that. So are you buying any of this? What do you think? Make of it?
It's a difficult situation because you basically have these two dishonest actors, okay? We've got Russia, which you really can't trust anything that comes out of there. They know this. And then of course you've got US media and our, State Department, also bad faith actors in terms of being honest, truly and fully with the American people. So it is difficult to take either side at their word. Mm-hmm. But what we have to do is, I don't want to say wait and see, but it is almost wait and see and hope for the best. Let's hope that what Blinken is saying is accurate. Let's hope that Russia, when they came out and said, well, phase 1 is done, we're entering phase 2, which is we're gonna pull some people back. Let's hope that is also accurate. But then again, when they first had these peace talks, and I forget where they met outside of Ukraine. They said, we're gonna have the ceasefire, remember? Mm-hmm. Well, there was no ceasefire at all.
That's true.
And that's when they escalated things. So we've been duped before by Russia with terms of, hey, no, everything's cool. Even in the run up to it, when everybody was saying, oh, they're increasing their troops, and Russia says, no, we're not. We're moving them back. We're not going closer to Ukraine. Well, no, you actually were. They've lied to us so many times in 2 months now. So Russia is completely unbelievable anything they say, I believe. So yeah. We've got what we've got. We don't have people doing what we do on the ground over there, telling the truth, for the US media. So it's so tough. It is so tough to make heads or tails of what actually is happening until it has already happened. And that's what makes reporting on this so difficult too, because we can't just take anything at face value. As you said, you got to take it all with a grain of salt. And we only get the real story after we see a hospital bombed or after we see the apartment buildings crumbling to the ground. And we need better, but that's mostly on the media here in the United States. They have wanted war. They always want war. I mean, they have General Dynamics and Boeing running advertisements on their networks. Like we're gonna go out and buy a missile. No, they do it because they buy loyalty with those ads. And so, it's a very difficult situation is pretty much, the big takeaway of this, unfortunately.
Farron, you don't have like a Stinger missile launcher above your mantle or something like that? Or like a recreational drone that can fire, Hellfire missiles? Is that just me? Yeah, and by the way, one of the things in addition that makes it difficult to know exactly what to make of this information, whether the information is coming from Russia or US officials or Ukrainian officials, is the heartfelt desire for it to end, because what we see is terrible. We want to believe that these developments are true. We want to believe that they're pulling out of these areas. We want to believe, as they say, a Kremlin spokesman says that Russia is not considering turning to nuclear weapons in the war in Ukraine. They would only do that following a threat for their existence. But again, who knows? I find it inconceivable that they would use nuclear weapons, but I also found it inconceivable that they would do an outright full-on invasion of Ukraine. So I've been wrong before. They say, by the way, that they're getting close to potentially accepting a face-to-face meeting between Zelensky and Putin, which is pitched as a major concession. I don't necessarily understand why that would be. I don't necessarily understand why that would help diplomatically that much. But all of this seems to indicate that Russia might be moving towards a willingness to come to the bargaining table in a serious way. And by the way, they've received some immediate potential incentives towards that. For instance, while I hate this sort of stuff generally, and the fact that the media focuses so much on it, I find disgusting. But if it gets us to diplomacy, then fine, I'll focus on it. Hey, Russia, look at the fact that like oil prices stabilized and all that. And by the way, the ruble moved back to pre-invasion levels against the dollar. Isn't that great? Look at what not invading might bring you. It might help your economy. All of you oligarchs, you might make a lot of money through peace. So maybe if they see this positive economic news, Farron, maybe we can finally get them to the table.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. And I do have to say, I'm not trying to be just total, US, you can't be trusted. I think Biden has actually, to his credit, done a pretty good job. with handling this situation, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't buy into the no-fly zone, which effectively would have been ready for World War III. The sanctions, of course, on the oligarchs, that's wonderful. What they've done to the people, not good, obviously. Sanctions always tend to do that. But effectively, keeping American boots not on the ground is the best thing we as a country could have hoped for. And I think if this had been, Donald Trump, we would have seen boots on the ground. They probably would have been fighting for a different country. But, I do have to say that not going along with all of the aggression, even when Ukraine has asked for it, please do a no-fly zone. Please, NATO, do so. The US is saying, listen, no, okay, we're gonna help you. We're gonna do what we can, but we're not starting World War III. So, so far, I am very happy with that. The last thing I want to see is the United States get involved in a military way where our people are over there and this escalates beyond repair, because that's what would happen. If we get involved, everybody gets involved, and then it doesn't end well for anybody.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Look, we've been highly critical of Biden for virtually everything. All the specifics last year and the complete lack of specifics now. I mean, I feel like he's completely given up on his presidency and he's just sort of phoning it in. He's engaged in the foreign policy stuff, which is good. And by the way, I don't want to say generally that I think he's been nailing foreign policy, because I would remind our audience, there are other wars going on that we are supporting in a number of ways. But on this one, I do agree he deserves some credit. I would very, very narrowly tailor it to this particular issue.
Yes.
But yes, it doesn't look like we're gonna be fighting Russia as of this point. So that we got that going for us. But we will have to see what ends up happening with this supposed retreat. Look, they apparently, the Ukrainians say they killed another colonel. So they are wiping out officers left and right. And if that's what it takes, I don't like to see anyone dying, including Russian soldiers. But I mean, I want this war to end. In any event, we are gonna have to take our second break of the hour. When we come back, Fox News has responded to the situation at the Oscars in about the way that you might expect, with a few wrinkles that you might not have, and we'll be breaking that down after this.
If it was a fan, it'd be totally different treatment than it would be for a celebrity. And also, I think very different scenario when you think to, I couldn't get out of my head as I watched this, the White House Correspondents Association dinner from 2018, where Sarah Sanders was so maliciously attacked. You had Samantha Wolf, or B, whatever the heck her name is, Michelle Wolf, going after Sarah Sanders for her appearance, and minutes long, excruciating detail. And I watched Sarah Sanders sit there, my predecessor, with such grace and poise and kindness, and just sit there and take it. Because if you're a Republican woman, you got to take it. If you're a celebrity, you engage in this behavior and you'll have people come to your defense. Jamal Bowman, another congressman, came to the defense of Will Smith.
Okay, so first of all, the comedian was Michelle Wolf, and she's hilarious. And she didn't mock Sarah Huckabee Sanders' appearance. She mocked the fact that she was being paid to lie. But that right there, an attempt by Kayleigh McEnany to turn the entire Will Smith and Chris Rock thing into, isn't it tough on Republican women, is actually not the worst take coming out of Fox News, when it's offensive and it's weird, but there was worse stuff. Take a look at this mashup.
When a comedian says it, you wouldn't have done that because you have class. Or at least you sound like you do, because you have a British accent.
Don't be too hasty. Don't be misled by the accent.
The first time I've ever seen the media cover black on black crime, so I'm actually quite surprised by this.
You don't have to follow the rules. If you're on the right and you say something they don't like, then they can respond with violence. And the Oscars are not the hood. I think it's not a bar.
LA sheriff didn't haul this guy out of there at the next commercial break. Explains why there's such a huge crime problem in this country, because you can just go up as an audience member and just cold cock a comedian, and it explains why liberals have no sense of humor.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So there's a mixture of these two celebrities getting into a public fight proves that Republicans have it bad, and also a lot of, I was gonna say subtle racism. It ain't subtle when you said the Oscars isn't the hood, Farron. I feel like she was really ladling it on there.
For somebody who's had run-ins in the law with her and her family, I would think Pirro would maybe not want to throw those stones from inside of her glass house, but okay, if she wants to go there. Either way, one thing happens one time on a show that Republicans were already gonna absolutely dismantle on Monday morning, because God knows they hate liberal Hollywood. They were just waiting for something to go after, and boom, they gave it to them. But it's one thing, one time. This is not endemic of, this is because all the crime in America. This is why it happens. No, it's not. No, this is not going to embolden people to go and attack comedians on stage, as someone said on Twitter. You have to be so just smooth-brained to think that this is an indication of a sea change in the United States in any way other than Will Smith got pissed and smacked Chris Rock. That's what happened. Chris Rock told a joke that sure, he probably should not have said, but did he even know, exactly? So look, bad joke, bad reaction. And they want to make it all about, this is what black people do. This is what black people do back in the hood. And now they're bringing it to this prestigious award show that we love to mock every year anyway.
They hate it. They love to pretend that they wouldn't go if they were invited or whatever. By the way, I'm not going to do that. I would totally be there. I don't care where you seat me. I'll stand. Honestly, I'll stand in the middle of an aisle. I don't care. I want to go. That would be cool. But anyway, yeah, 100%. And they are happy to use it as an opportunity to advance whatever BS narrative they have, even ones that work at cross purposes. So this is what all the right has to deal with. The right gets attacked. The left is so quick to use violence. Jeanine Pirro, would you care to talk about January 6th for 5 seconds on your show? Would you like to show some of the footage? Because your side was so angry at cops from stopping them from trying to overthrow democracy that they tried to beat them to death with the American flag. Was that endemic of some sort of societal shift? Kind of felt like it at the time. Felt like we were crossing some sort of line, but you weren't interested in covering that. You were only interested when it's Chris Rock and it's Will Smith. And so the Jesse Waters comments about the black on black crime and all that, you know exactly where these people are coming from. But there's actually someone on the right who seems to disagree with them, because all of them, for a variety of reasons, were against what Will Smith did. He actually has a defender on the right. And do you know who it is? Marjorie Greene, who tweeted, "I never watched the Oscars, but I've seen the Will Smith Chris Rock clip a million times this morning. I have to say, I appreciate the alpha male response of a husband defending his wife. It was settled and then no more drama. Chris Rock handled it like a man with no whining." Well, that's true. First of all, the idea that it's settled and there's no more drama, there's lots of drama. Okay, let's be clear, there's drama. But she goes on to say it was much better than a Twitter fight with people saying tough things on their keyboard behind their screens, which she would never do. They handled the issue and then they actually carried on. Which, look, you're entitled to your opinion. If you think that, when someone makes a joke, the appropriate response is to sock them, okay, that's a take that you can have. But I just think it's funny that she pretends that there's other people that talk tough but don't actually bring it when it comes to violence, Farron.
Well, I guess which one is more alpha? The man who defended his wife and hit the other man, or the man who gets hit and just takes it in front of an audience of millions and barely even flinches? I don't know. I guess Marjorie Taylor Greene's gonna have to explain that for us a little further. What makes the real alpha? Who is super alpha at this point? No, it was a ridiculous display. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene would want to take it down to those most basic, this is alpha man protect woman. Yeah. You're still stuck in this caveman mentality, because I really think that's about all she can comprehend at this point.
Yeah,
and
it's an earlier phase of development.
Yeah, it seriously plays well with their audience. They think, okay, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene understands how these roles are supposed to work. The woman is helpless. The man has to go out there and smack another man. It's pathetic. It's so pathetic.
I agree. Unfortunately, that's the end of our hour. We got way more to talk about though. So we're gonna be breaking down a lot of stories. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back in just a few. Thank you to some of our new members and members re-upping, including Pandora, who's been a tier 2 member for 15 months and says, hey John, JR said to ask you about Dragon Con and furries. Also, can I be Mischief Dragon? I don't know. After bringing up the furries, maybe not. No, you can have the name. I don't know what Dragon Con is. Is that a real con? Or Farron, are you familiar with Dragon Con?
It doesn't sound completely unfamiliar. I mean, there's a good chance somebody maybe mentioned it on Twitter. God only, I mean, we just make up words all the time now, so nothing means anything. I don't know.
If it isn't real, then perhaps the Dragon Squad will have to come up with something.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.